Hi there, it's Craig here, and this is a Craig Talk video. We're going to talk about something here. I got asked a question. I put a video out quite some time ago called What Happens When You Die, which nobody knows, obviously. Well, you know, we can always imagine and speculate and try to figure it out, and of course we'll never know until it happens, and even then we may not ever know. And somebody responded with a comment pertaining to leaving the universe, and I wasn't sure what he meant about that. By that, like, you know, what do you mean when you die? Do we leave the universe, or leaving the universe while we're still alive? And he came back and said, no, you know, what about leaving the universe while we're still alive? Well, that brings up a whole bunch of, my mind started to go, and I got, you know, thinking about it, and of course whenever I do that, I immediately set up my camera and I turn it on, and away we go. So this is totally off the cuff here. We're just going to talk about this. So here's my view of this whole thing. First of all, the universe is you know, we don't really know what it is, and but we know it exists because we're here, right? And we've called everything that we can see the universe, all the cosmos. You know, it's the universe. That's what we call it. So there's two schools of thought here. One is that, you know, the universe, there's only one universe, and if we find anything, you know, else external to what we know as the universe, then we just call that the universe. We add that to our definition of the universe. And I've heard it mentioned like blood types, where, you know, you've got type, you know, O or type whatever, and then you discover a new blood type. You don't call it something else, you call it blood, and you add another letter to it, right? So it's always blood. We just find new types of it, right? But it's just blood. So the universe, if we find other aspects of it, other dimensions of it, or other universes even, then we just say, well, we just add those to our definition of the universe. But a lot of people talk about, you know, the universe as what we know, sort of this sort of bubble that we live in. So is the universe just, you know, our little space-time bubble, and then anything else outside of that is our, you know, other universes? Or is the universe everything that we can ever find as we explore, even if we find other space-time continuums? That's part of the universe. Is that which is it? Is basically what I'm asking. And so there's two schools of thought. The scientific community tends to go, you know, toward more that there's multiverses. This is a multiverse, where we have a universe and there's other universes also, perhaps infinite amounts of them. Okay, so we have a new term called a multiverse. Well, I did a little bit of digging around. I looked up the word uni, which means one. It's a uni, single thing. Okay, so that would lean you towards the fact that there's only one universe, and everything that we find is part of the universe. There's only one of it, right? There's not more universes than just one. But the word verse seems to relate to the idea of there being a part of an entire poem, let's say. You know, a verse is a small part of a thing that has many verses in it. Like even the Bible, you know, has many. You've got the Bible, but there's many verses in the Bible. So I seem to come to the conclusion there that the word verse means that it's just a small part of many of them. A verse. You can have one verse. I could say, Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow. That's one verse. And if that was all there was to that poem, then that would just be a poem with one verse. But poems can have many verses. Songs can have many verses. The Bible has many verses. So we are looking at a possibility of the definition of the word universe being one verse out of many. Okay, so it's just, I'm just running this by all you guys, and I know one particular person, is a good friend of mine, who has a strong argument against this, but that's okay. I mean, we don't know any of this stuff. We're just thinking about it. So let's go with the idea that there could be more than one verse. So our universe is not alone. We have other universes. Let's go down that road. It doesn't really matter whether we go down there or we say everything that exists is the universe. Our universe exists. We know that. So there has to be, this is, a little, just going down a little different path here. Our universe has to exist somewhere. There has to be somewhere for our universe to exist in. I don't think that, again, assuming that the term universe means our little bubble of space-time, okay? Let's just call it the known universe. That way everybody's happy. So our known universe has to exist somewhere. There has to be a place or a domain or something where the universe can be, where it can exist. Because we know it exists, right? That area or that plane of existence also exists. And so it would have to have a place to exist. So it becomes an infinite thing. And if you want to look into fractals, okay, fractals can demonstrate infinity quite well. And even infinity within a finite space. Basically, what fractals are, and it's hard to describe unless you're looking at one, where you can zoom in on this. It's like a geometrical sort of design with sort of parts to it. And when you zoom in on each part looks like the original whole that you saw when you looked at the whole thing. Okay, so you just keep on zooming in, you just keep on seeing the same pattern over and over again, and that pattern consists of little patterns, and when you zoom in on any one of those little patterns, they now look like the main pattern that we started with. So you just keep on zooming in, it just never ends. And if you zoom out on one of these fractal things, look it up, you'll see what I mean. You just keep on seeing more and more and more of the same thing. It just never ends. And again, maybe I'll be able to find some visuals here. So in that sense, the universe or the existence can be infinite, and the number of known universes can be infinite. Okay? All right, so that kind of gives you a little bit of a picture of how I see things. Let's look at leaving the universe, leaving our known universe, this universe that we're part of, okay? The truth of the matter is, as far as I'm concerned, is that we don't live in the universe. We live on the universe. Just like everything else in the universe, the stars, the planets, the materials, the matter, it's all on the universe. Let's look at the universe as a two-dimensional surface, like a table or a cloth, let's say. Okay? And we're all on it. we're all part of it. We're stuck to it, right? It's not like we're in a box where you've got this, this confines of these 6, surfaces that contain us, and that we're inside of it. No. It's more like we're on the surfaces of those 6 sides of the box. We're stuck to the surface. So if you look at it as a 2-dimensional universe, so it would be like a flat surface, we're on it, we're stuck to it like Velcro. And we can't raise up and look above it or below it. Okay? Because we're also 2-dimensional beings in this 2-dimensional universe, and so that we're just part of it. We're on the universe. We live on it. We're part of it. We're woven into it. It's everything is part of the same fabric, let's say. Okay? So when you extrapolate that up into a 3-dimensional universe, which is what we've got as far as the space goes, it's 3-dimensional space, we're just part of it. We're not inside of it, okay? Or we're not outside of it either. We're just on it. We're stuck to it. So if you can sort of get that, concept in your head, where that we're sort of, we're woven in with everything else and sort of connected to everything else. Like a sweater, where the weaving of the sweater, it's all connected, and it's all made of one ball of yarn. I mean, they take a ball of yarn and they knit, and they've got this, next thing you know, they've got a sweater out of one single strand of yarn. So we're all interconnected. Everything in the universe is interconnected. It's all part of the same fabric. It's all from the same ball of yarn, you see. So to think about leaving the universe, leaving our known universe, what would that mean? How could you, as part of, you'd have to think about, okay, taking part of the yarn from that sweater and removing it. Well, you can't, because it's all one piece of yarn. You'd have to cut it. You'd have to cut a piece out. Well, then you'd have to cut a hole in space-time. You'd have to cut a hole in our universe to get out of it. And then, of course, could you exist and continue to live and breathe and everything else? That's a whole other, we're talking theoretically here. I mean, can an object leave the universe? That's what we're really dealing with here. I don't think we could because we'd die as soon as we lost all of our air and everything. I've heard it described as universes being parallel, and if you look at them in a 2-dimensional way, it's like a loaf of bread where there's slices, and each slice is its own universe, and in a 2-dimensional way of looking at things. And so you've got these, they're called brains, like membranes, but it's called brains. Each universe is a membrane, or just a brain, parallel to each other. And apparently when they touch, if they move, or there's gravity transferring between them, if they touch, then there's a new universe, a big bang, and a new universe created. And I've heard all this crazy stuff, and I mean, I don't know, but the bottom line is, can we leave the universe? I don't think so. Black holes come to mind. Black holes, if you don't know what a black hole is, it's a star that has collapsed in upon itself because it's ran out of energy, basically out of gas, and it's collapsed down to a point where the gravity is so strong that the star can no longer hold itself together, and it just sort of crumbles into an oblivion. And what we have is a singularity, and the gravity is so strong because the mass of the star still remains the same, even though it's like an infinitely small object. And because there's still the same amount of mass, there's still the same amount of gravity. So you have a gravitational pull that beyond a certain point, nothing can escape. If you shine a flashlight into a black hole, the light will never come back out. Okay? Because light itself responds to gravity, so it would just get sucked into the black hole. And that's why they're black, because light can't emanate or reflect off of these things. Look up black holes if you want to know more about them. We know they exist, and we almost also know pretty much that there's one at the center of every galaxy. So we have a black hole at the center of our Milky Way. That's why it rotates, because it's like water going down a drain. It's being sucked into this black hole, into this drain. I know I'm drifting here, covering a lot of stuff. I'm just spewing stuff out here, just rambling on. These are really neat things to think about, and through this discussion we can come up with other subtopics to talk about, and I would be glad to do that. I would also be glad to get myself a fresh beer, because that one's flatter than a pancake. Anyway, I guess to conclude, I believe that there's more than one universe, or there's an outside realm to the universe. I don't subscribe to the idea that anything that we find will then become part of the universe. We've defined the universe as everything that we can see right now. And if we find new stars, new galaxies, of course they're part of the universe, because they're here with us, inside of our little, or part of our little fabric that we call the universe. But if we find other fabrics, or other dimensions, or other surfaces, planes, mediums, or whatever, where other space-times exist, then those could be, I think, very easily called other universes. One part of many, a universe. And based on what I've learned in the last while about words and where they originate from, it would seem to me that the word universe would have been developed from the actual meaning of it, which is a one part of a verse, which is part of a bigger picture. So a universe is a one part of a more multi, or one part of many verses. Universe, one part of many verses, like a Bible or a poem or whatever. And so that's how I look at it. I don't think we can leave. I think that we can probably, if we have the technology, utilize the space, the existence outside the universe, because inside the universe, there's a limitation of how fast things can travel, how fast light can go, and as far as we know, there's a limitation to the speed within the confines of the surface that we live on. But if we could somehow use an energy to, or use some technology to send a signal off of that fabric and jump to another part of that fabric without having to travel within the confines of that fabric, then we could essentially transmit signals real time across the universe. And in Star Trek, they call it subspace. And Star Trek: The Next Generation, that show is full of ideas that I think already exist, and I just think they're being kept from us, or at least they're not being developed at this time, even though they are possible. And so they use a subspace signals, which basically would mean that if you have a universe, let's say a two-dimensional universe that's flat, instead of sending a signal across the fabric of the universe, where there's limitations of speed, you would send that signal off of the universe and put it back down somewhere where it would then arrive. And the time that would take to do that would be instantaneous, because there would be presumably no limitation to the speed of a signal outside of the fabric. You see what I'm saying? I've lost some of these. I know I've lost a lot of you guys, but these are the kind of deep things that I get thinking about when I'm, so I think, we could do that, but I don't think physically we could leave. And that's what really the original question was, can we leave the universe? Now, when we die, if there's such thing as existence after our bodies expire, if our souls, if we have a soul and it still exists after our bodies, give up and croak, would that soul be able to leave the universe and go to other domains? Well, that's too much, man. I mean, we don't even know whether we have a soul or not that could do that. So we're really projecting a little too far out, I think, there. We can only believe what we believe, and based on a lot of stories and things that I've heard, there is an existence after our bodies expire, that our bodies are not the summation of everything that we are. That there is another entity that occupies our bodies. I think there's more to the human body than just the physical part of it. There's obviously some sort of a consciousness there, and that consciousness would arise from something intangible that some of us have a lot of trouble believing in, but that's what we call the soul. And the concept has been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, that we have a soul. It seems to me to be a fundamental belief amongst all humans all around the world, even before we were able to communicate with each other, that we had an inner self, a soul that was occupying our bodies, that would leave when the body dies. So there's no proof of it, of course, but the overwhelming consensus of the entire population of the world is pretty much an indication of what that might, what the answer to that might be. Anyway, I've gone on way too long here. I really appreciate you watching. Thank you. This is just one of my little spilling out my ideas out of my brain when I get thinking about stuff, and that's one of the things I think about a lot. So that's the question I got. That's the answer I gave, and hopefully lots of discussions down in the comment section. Please be kind. Don't be, and this is not a religious discussion. I really don't have anything against religion if you want to do that, but I don't want this to become a debate between what the Bible says and the Christian thing and the Muslim thing and the whatever. Let's not get into that fight, okay? If you have a belief and it contradicts, my beliefs or someone else's beliefs in regard to religion, then it's probably best just left alone, because I don't want to get into that kind of a debate on this channel. All right? Thank you for watching, and we'll talk soon. See ya.